Most people don't realize the most dangerous thing they're losing every day is not time, it's their mind. And once you lose control of what you remember, you slowly lose control of who you become. Have you ever been terrified, not by what you don't know, but by what you suddenly can't remember? You walk into a room and the reason you came there is gone. Someone tells you their name. You smile, you nod, and 5 seconds later, it has vanished. You study for hours. You feel prepared. You feel confident. Then the test is in front of you, and your mind goes empty. Not tired, not confused, empty. And in that moment, something dangerous whispers inside you. Maybe my memory is bad. Maybe I'm not that smart. Maybe my brain just doesn't work the way it should. That whisper is quiet, but it's powerful. Because if you believe it long enough, you stop trusting your own mind. You stop challenging yourself. You stop aiming higher. You start depending on notes, reminders, screenshots, and endless scrolling, while slowly losing faith in the one place that should be strongest: your head. But what if the real problem is not your memory? What if the real problem is that no one ever taught you how memory actually works? Welcome to Glaze English. And if you're listening to this right now, I want you to understand something very clearly. This is not another 5 tips to remember better video. This is not background noise. This is not motivation that fades tomorrow. What you are about to hear is a system, a way of understanding your mind that most people never learn. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because here is the truth that changes everything. You do not have a weak memory. You have an untrained one. Memory is not a gift. It is not a talent. It is not something you are born with or without. Memory is a system. And right now, that system is running in the background of your life, shaping what you keep, what you lose, and ultimately, who you become, without you ever being in control of it. Think about that. Your future depends on what you remember. Your confidence depends on what you can access. Your learning, your skills, your language ability, your decisions, even your identity are built on what stays in your mind. Yet almost nobody is taught how to build that foundation. So people blame themselves. They say, I'm just bad at remembering. I'm not a fast learner. My brain is weak. No, your brain is not weak. It is simply following rules you were never shown. And when you don't know the rules, the system feels like the enemy. This video is here to make it your ally. In the next minutes, you are going to learn how memory really works, why information disappears, why attention is the true beginning of intelligence, how to turn boring facts into unforgettable mental experiences, how to store knowledge so it doesn't leak away, and how to protect your mind in a world that is designed to overload it. But there is another layer to this journey. As you listen, you are not only training your memory, you are training your English. You are hearing how ideas are built, how emotions are expressed, how clear, real English sounds when it is used to think, not just to translate. So whether your goal is to master English, pass exams, build skills, or simply feel sharp and clear again, this is not just information. This is conditioning. Because when you truly understand what you are about to learn, something profound begins to change. You stop being afraid of forgetting. You stop doubting your intelligence. You stop feeling lost inside your own head. And you begin to feel something many people haven't felt in years. Trust. Trust in your mind. Trust in your ability to learn. Trust in your power to grow. Now, before we go any further, if content like this speaks to you, if you care about building a stronger mind, deeper English, and a better version of yourself, support this journey by subscribing to the channel. It tells us to keep creating, to go deeper, and to bring you more work like this. Because on this channel, we don't just learn English, we rebuild the mind behind it. Take a breath, slow down, and let's begin. And now that you've opened the door to a new way of seeing your mind, we need to step inside and understand what has really been happening every time something enters your head and quietly disappears. Before you can train memory, you have to stop treating it like a mystery and start seeing it as a process. Most people imagine memory as a container, like a box. Information goes in, and later it comes out. When it doesn't come out, they assume the box is broken. But your brain is not a box. It is a living system, a system that decides, a system that filters, a system that constantly asks one silent question: is this worth keeping? Every second of your life, your senses are sending an ocean of data into your nervous system: sounds, faces, words, movement, color, emotion, danger, beauty, noise, meaning. If your brain tried to store everything, you wouldn't be intelligent. You would be overwhelmed. So your brain does something brilliant. It deletes, it erases, it ignores, it lets go. Not because it is weak, but because it is efficient. The real purpose of memory is not to keep everything. The real purpose of memory is to protect what matters. This is why understanding short-term and long-term memory changes everything. Short-term memory is not designed to hold your life. It is designed to hold the moment. It keeps information just long enough for your brain to decide what to do with it. A phone number you just heard, a sentence you just read, a face you just saw. Most of what enters short-term memory is meant to disappear. Long-term memory is different. Long-term memory is not temporary storage. It is identity storage. It holds what shapes your skills, your language, your beliefs, your reactions, your sense of who you are. The tragedy is that most people never move information from one to the other. They read, but they don't process. They listen, but they don't engage. They study, but they don't interact. So information passes through their minds like wind through an open window. Felt for a second, then gone. This is why you can read a page and, seconds later, not remember a single sentence. Not because you're incapable, but because your brain never received a signal that said, "This is important. Save this." And that signal has a name: attention. Attention is not concentration. Attention is selection. It is the act of choosing, consciously or unconsciously, what deserves space in your inner world. Whatever you give real attention to, your brain tags. Whatever you don't, your brain treats as background noise. This is why memory does not begin with techniques. Memory begins with presence. Think about how many times you've heard something without listening. How many times you've read something while your mind was somewhere else. How many times your eyes were on a screen while your thoughts were in another room. Your brain does not store what your eyes see. It stores what your awareness touches. And this is the hidden reason modern life is quietly destroying memory. Not because information is too complex, but because attention is constantly fractured. Notifications, messages, multiple tabs, videos playing while you scroll, conversations while you check your phone. Your brain is trained to shift every few seconds, to sample, not to stay, to glance, not to enter. And a mind that never enters, never stores. This is why people feel like they are always busy, yet remember almost nothing they consume. Their brain is active, but never deep, stimulated, but never engaged. Here is something few people realize. Your brain does not remember what you want to remember. It remembers what you attend to. You can tell yourself, this is important. But if your attention is weak, the message is never delivered. This is why two people can sit in the same room, hear the same words, read the same page, and walk away with completely different memories. One was present, the other was only there. So the foundation of all memory training is not more effort. It is a different quality of awareness. Real attention is not tense. It is clear. It is the moment you stop multitasking, the moment you look at one thing and let it fully register, the moment you allow yourself to actually be where your body is. Because in that moment, something subtle but powerful happens. Your brain opens the gate. Neuroscience shows that attention literally changes how information is encoded. When you focus, neural signals become stronger. Connections form more easily. Patterns are built instead of fragments. Attention is the difference between a sound and a word, between a face and a person, between a sentence and an idea. This is why a single second of real awareness can be more powerful than an hour of distracted exposure. When you pause before leaving a car and notice the number, when you repeat a name and look at the person's face, when you read one paragraph and ask, what did this actually say? You are no longer consuming, you are selecting. And selection is the beginning of memory. From this point forward, whenever something matters to you, treat it differently. Slow down. Let it land. Say it in your mind. Feel it for a moment. Those few seconds are not wasted time. They are the moment your brain decides whether this experience will die today or live inside you. This is the foundation. Before visualization, before stories, before systems. Because no method can store what awareness never touches. And once you learn to control attention, memory stops being an accident. It becomes a choice. And once you understand that attention is the gate, the next question becomes simple and powerful. When information finally enters, what form does it take inside your mind? Because memory is not only about letting something in. Memory is about how it lives once it's inside. Here is where most people make a mistake that quietly destroys their learning. They try to store knowledge in the same form they receive it. Words, black letters on a white page, sounds in the air, abstract definitions. But your brain was never designed to remember language first. It was designed to remember experience. Before humans had writing, before they had textbooks, before they had exams, they survived by remembering images, movements, faces, danger, landscapes, stories, and emotions. and that ancient design is still the operating system of your mind today. This is why the most important shift you can make in memory mastery is this. Stop feeding your brain information. Start giving it experiences. If I say the word fire, you don't see F-I-R-E. You see light. You feel heat. You sense movement. You might even smell smoke. That reaction is not imagination. That reaction is memory language. Your brain speaks in pictures, motion, space, and feeling. Words are only symbols that point toward those inner experiences. When you try to remember words as words, you are asking your brain to work in a foreign language. So the first great skill of encoding is visualization. Visualization does not mean trying hard to imagine. It means allowing information to transform into something your mind can naturally hold. A name is not a sound. It is a face doing something strange. A concept is not a sentence. It is a scene unfolding. A word is not a definition. It is an image that moves. When you meet someone named Lily, and you repeat, Lily, 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 your brain hears noise. But when you see her hair turning into white lilies, when you imagine petals falling when she laughs, your brain receives a picture. And pictures are sticky. They have shape. They have color. They have location. They can be revisited. This is why exaggeration matters. This is why humor matters. This is why even absurdity matters. Not because memory needs to be logical, but because memory needs to be noticeable. A boring image slides past the mind. A strange image stays. The moment you turn a piece of information into something visual, you stop fighting your biology and start working with it. But a single image is only the beginning, because your brain doesn't just store snapshots, it stores movies. This is where the story method changes everything. Lists are dead to the brain. Stories are alive. A list is isolated points. A story is relationship. When you connect one image to another through action, cause, surprise, and emotion, you create a path. And the brain loves paths. It follows them naturally. This is why you can forget 10 random facts, but remember the plot of a film you watched years ago. Not because the film was more important, but because it was structured. Structure gives memory a direction. When you build a story, you are no longer asking your brain to hold information. You are inviting it to watch something happen. And watching is effortless. Imagine trying to remember a shopping list as 5 separate words. Then imagine seeing a giant milk carton crash into a mountain of eggs, slipping, sliding into a book that opens and releases a flock of shoes, while a cat in glasses applauds. You didn't memorize anything. You witnessed something. And witnesses don't forget easily. Stories give your images movement. Movement gives them life. And life is what memory is built for. Now we go even deeper. Because pictures and stories alone can make information memorable, but emotion makes it unforgettable. Emotion is not an extra layer. Emotion is the signal. Your brain has a built-in priority system, and that system is not logical. It is emotional. It does not ask, "Is this useful?" It asks, "Does this matter?" Moments tied to feeling are processed differently. They activate deeper circuits. They recruit more areas of the brain. They are marked for long-term storage. This is why you can forget what you wore last Tuesday, but remember a sentence someone spoke to you years ago when you were vulnerable, excited, ashamed, or inspired. The feeling became the anchor. So, when you learn something, the question is not only, what does this mean? The deeper question is, what does this touch in me? Where does this connect to my life, to my goals, to my fears, to my memories, to my future self? A historical date becomes a human story. A vocabulary word becomes a personal experience. A concept becomes a mirror. And when something becomes personal, it stops being temporary. Even if a topic seems dry, emotion can be created. Through imagination, through humor, through challenge, through association. Your brain does not require real danger or real beauty to mark something as meaningful. It only requires intensity. This is why even fake emotion works. A triangle becomes a slice of pizza you don't want to share. A chemical reaction becomes a dramatic explosion in your mind. A foreign word becomes a character with a personality. Once feeling is involved, memory stops being mechanical. It becomes human. And now, all of this comes together in one of the most powerful memory systems ever discovered: the mind palace. Your brain is exceptionally good at remembering places, locations, routes, rooms, corners, distances. You may forget a conversation from last week, but you can still walk through a childhood home in your mind. You can still feel where the door was, where the window was, where you used to sit. This is not random. Space organizes memory. In the wild, remembering where food was, where danger lived, where shelter existed, was survival. So the brain evolved to treat places as natural storage structures. A mind palace is simply using that ancient strength to hold modern knowledge. You choose a place you know well, not one you imagine, one you remember. Your apartment, your school, a daily route. You mentally walk through it, and in each location, you place an image that represents something you want to remember. Not written, not spoken, placed. On the couch, by the door, on the stairs, in the kitchen. Now your information has something it has never had before: an address. And the moment something has an address, it stops floating. It belongs somewhere. When you want to remember, you don't search, you visit. You don't force recall, you walk and observe. This changes the psychology of memory completely. Instead of pressure, there is navigation. Instead of anxiety, there is movement. Instead of emptiness, there is space filled with scenes. This is how people memorize speeches without notes. This is how they remember hundreds of random items. This is how they build mental worlds that store knowledge. They don't try to hold information in their head. They build a place for it to live. And something remarkable happens when you start encoding information this way. Learning stops feeling like consumption. It starts feeling like creation. You are no longer reading words. You are directing experiences. You are no longer trying to remember. You are building an inner world. And the more vivid that world becomes, the more reliable your memory becomes. Because memory is not about strength, it is about design. When information is visual, connected, emotional, and spatial, it stops competing with the noise of life. It stands out. It belongs. It waits for you. This is how you turn your mind from a leaky bucket into a structured landscape. From a place where knowledge disappears into a place where it settles. And once information is encoded this way, something new becomes possible. Not just remembering, but building. Because now your mind is no longer a hallway things pass through. It is becoming a home. And in the next part of this journey, you will learn how to make sure what you build there doesn't fade with time, but deepens with it. And once you've learned how to build memories inside your mind, the next question is no longer, how do I remember? But something far more important. How do I make sure what I build doesn't quietly fade? Because here is the painful truth most people discover too late. Understanding something today does not mean you will have it tomorrow. Feeling clear now does not mean you will be clear next week. The brain is not loyal to first encounters. It is loyal to patterns. And this is where the real architecture of long-term memory begins. Every time you learn something, your brain creates a fragile pathway, a light trace, a temporary bridge. If that pathway is not used again, it weakens. If it is not revisited, it dissolves. Not because your brain is cruel, but because it is efficient. It keeps what returns. It releases what disappears. This is why one-time learning is an illusion. It feels real. It feels satisfying, but it does not last. Spaced repetition exists because the brain changes over time, not in moments. Memory is not installed. It is grown. When you return to information after space has passed, something powerful happens. Your brain must rebuild the path. And rebuilding does more than repetition ever could. It thickens the connection. It deepens the imprint. It tells your nervous system, this is not noise, this belongs. Each return strengthens what the last one started. An hour later, a day later, a few days later, a week later. The timing matters because forgetting is part of the process. When something almost slips away and you bring it back, the brain treats it differently. Effort becomes a signal. Recovery becomes proof. And slowly, what was once fragile becomes stable. What once required effort becomes accessible. What once lived in short-term memory migrates into something far more valuable, long-term identity. But repetition alone is not enough, because repetition can still be passive, and passive exposure creates familiarity, not ownership. This is where teaching changes the entire game. The moment you try to explain something, your brain is forced into a different role. It cannot hide behind recognition. It cannot depend on the page. It must generate. It must organize. It must translate understanding into structure. Teaching exposes gaps. Teaching reveals confusion. Teaching transforms information into form. And in doing so, it activates multiple memory systems at once. Conceptual, linguistic, emotional, and motor. When you teach, you are not reviewing knowledge. You are rebuilding it from the inside. Even if no one is listening, speak out loud, write a message, record a voice note, explain to an empty chair. Your brain does not measure the size of the audience. It measures the depth of engagement. When you shift from consumer to creator, memory stops being something you hope for and starts becoming something you command. Then there is a time in your day when your brain becomes something very rare, a librarian. When you sleep, your brain does not shut down. It organizes, it sorts, it strengthens. It decides what stays and what is released. Sleep is not rest from learning. Sleep is when learning becomes structure. During the night, neural connections that were activated during the day are either reinforced or weakened, and the brain uses one major rule to decide: what was used recently, what carried meaning, what showed up again. This is why what you touch before sleep has extraordinary influence. It sits at the front of the mental line. It whispers to the librarian, "Look at this again. This matters." A few minutes of review before sleep is not revision. It is instruction. You are not checking what you know. You are telling your nervous system what kind of mind you are building. When you quietly revisit ideas, words, insights, and lessons at night, you are not cramming. You are curating. And what you curate becomes part of you. Now we add another force: writing. Writing is not just memory support. Writing is memory formation. When you write, something unique happens. Thought slows down. Ideas separate. Meaning becomes visible. Your mind moves from reception to construction. Writing forces precision. You cannot write a blur. You must choose words. You must organize. You must commit. And commitment is powerful. When your hand moves, when your eyes follow the line, when your attention traces each word, your brain receives a multisensory message. This is not temporary. This is deliberate. Writing turns learning into a physical act. It is the moment knowledge leaves the abstract and enters the real. This is why people who write what they learn remember more. Not because they write beautifully, but because they build structure. And structure is what memory recognizes. A notebook is not storage, it is training. And finally, there is the most honest, most demanding, and most effective memory tool of all: active recall. Most people believe memory improves by looking again, reading again, watching again, highlighting again. These feel productive because they are easy. They create recognition, and recognition is comfortable. But comfort does not build strength. Retrieval does. Active recall means removing support and asking your mind to stand on its own. It means closing the book, turning off the screen, and facing one question: what can I pull out right now? Not what looks familiar, not what feels known. What can actually be generated? This moment is often uncomfortable. Silence appears. Gaps become obvious. Confidence is challenged. And that discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of construction. Each time you search your memory and bring something forward, you strengthen the very pathway you are using. You are not testing memory, you are training it. This is why people who quiz themselves, who summarize without notes, who try to teach from memory, progress faster than those who simply review. Because memory grows when it is used, not when it is admired. Active recall transforms information from something you recognize into something you own. And ownership changes how knowledge lives inside you. It stops being something you visit. It becomes something you inhabit. When you combine these forces, spaced return, expressive use, night consolidation, physical writing, and deliberate retrieval, something extraordinary happens. Learning stops being a series of moments. It becomes a process. Memory stops being an accident. It becomes a system. You are no longer depending on motivation. You are building rhythm. You are no longer hoping information will stay. You are designing conditions that make staying natural. And this is where real confidence is born. Not from how much you read, not from how much you watch, but from knowing that what you build in your mind has a place, a path, and a future. You are no longer collecting information. You are cultivating a mind. And when a mind is cultivated, it does not just remember more. It remembers deeper. It remembers when it matters. It remembers who it is becoming. And in the final part of this journey, we move beyond techniques and systems into something even more decisive: the environment your mind lives in. Because even the strongest memory cannot grow in poisoned soil. And once you begin cultivating a real memory system, one final truth becomes impossible to ignore. No method can survive in a mind that is constantly being invaded. Because the greatest enemy of memory in the modern world is not age, intelligence, or even stress. It is saturation. Your brain was not designed to live in a permanent state of input. It was designed to experience, reflect, and integrate. But today, from the moment your eyes open, your mind is pulled outward. Messages, headlines, videos, opinions, alerts, streams of information that never end. And each one does more than take your time. Each one occupies mental territory. Your mind becomes a crowded room where nothing can settle. Ideas touch the surface and slide away. Insights appear and are buried. What could have grown roots is replaced before it even lands. This is why so many people feel busy but empty, stimulated but unclear, informed but unchanged. It is not because they are weak. It is because their inner environment is hostile to memory. A mind cannot build when it is never still. It cannot organize when it is always reacting. It cannot deepen when it is always moving. Memory does not live in noise. It lives in space. This is why the final discipline of memory mastery is not another technique. It is protection. Protection of attention. Protection of silence. Protection of mental boundaries. When you choose what enters your mind, you are choosing what kind of person you are becoming. Because everything you repeatedly consume trains your nervous system, shapes your focus, and fills the limited space where your real life must live. When that space is filled with fragments, your thinking becomes fragmented. When it is filled with noise, your memory becomes shallow. When it is filled with what matters, your mind becomes powerful. This is not about rejecting the modern world. It is about governing your place in it. Moments of stillness are not luxury. They are maintenance. Periods without stimulation are not boredom. They are restoration. Intentional silence is not emptiness. It is preparation. When you begin your day without immediately giving your attention away, your mind starts clear. When you write instead of scroll, your thoughts gain shape. When you end your night by touching what you are building, your brain carries it into sleep. And slowly, something profound shifts. Your mind stops feeling like a battlefield. It starts feeling like a home. And a home protects what lives inside it. When you live this way, memory is no longer something you chase. It becomes something that reflects who you are. You remember what aligns with you. You retain what you respect. You access what you repeatedly return to. And this is the real transformation. You are not becoming someone who remembers more. You are becoming someone who remembers what matters. Someone whose mind is not owned by the next distraction. Someone whose learning does not evaporate. Someone who can sit with an idea, build it, and carry it forward. This journey was never only about memory. It was about self-leadership, about reclaiming your attention, about designing your inner world, about building a mind that supports the life you want to live. And when you do that, something quiet but unshakable is born inside you. Trust. Trust in your thinking. Trust in your growth. Trust in your ability to become more than you were. Your mind is not fragile. It is waiting. And now you know how to build it. As we come to the end of this journey, it becomes clear that memory was never just the subject. It was the doorway. What you've really been exploring is the way your mind lives, moves, and shapes your future. Because memory is not only about recalling facts or learning faster. Memory is about what stays with you. And what stays with you quietly becomes who you are. Every belief you hold, every skill you rely on, every fear that limits you, every dream that pushes you forward lives inside memory. Your confidence is memory. Your doubts are memory. Your habits are memory in motion. When your memory is scattered, your life feels scattered. When your memory is shallow, your growth becomes shallow. But when your memory is designed, protected, and trained, something powerful happens. Your inner world starts working with you instead of against you. You stop feeling like life is just happening to you. You start feeling like you are building something. A trained memory gives you continuity. It connects yesterday to today. It allows effort to turn into skill. It allows experience to turn into wisdom. It allows learning to turn into identity. And that is why memory mastery is not about becoming a walking encyclopedia. It is about becoming a person who can carry lessons forward, who can grow without constantly starting over, who can deepen instead of constantly restarting. When your mind learns how to hold what matters, you gain something rare in the modern world: inner stability. You become less reactive because you are more rooted. You become less distracted because you are more directed. You become less dependent on constant input because you are building something inside. And from that place, real confidence emerges. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing that what you invest in yourself does not disappear, that your efforts compound, that your learning has weight, that your attention has direction, that your mind is becoming a place of strength. The deepest lesson in all of this is simple. Your life does not change when you consume more. Your life changes when what you touch begins to stay. So, how do you apply this? You begin by treating attention as sacred. You stop feeding your mind everything and start choosing what deserves space. You learn fewer things, but you build them deeper. You review what you want to become. You express what you learn. You protect silence. You return to what matters. And slowly, your mind stops being a place information passes through and becomes a place a future is built. That is memory mastery in real life. Before you go, here is a simple question for you. What is one thing you truly want your mind to hold more strongly starting today? Share your answer in the comments so everyone can learn from each other's perspective. And if content like this helps you grow, reflect, and build a stronger inner world, please subscribe to the channel to support the work. It truly motivates us to keep creating deeper, more meaningful content for you. Thank you for being here, and take care of your mind.